Well, good morning. And thank you very much, Benson, for that wonderful introduction. We're pretty excited to be here today. We've got the District Rotary Foundation Committee presenting two presentations, the first one being Foundation 101, and then we have grant qualification. So hopefully everyone is here. We have at least two people from each club for grant qualification, and then I'm glad you're here early and willing to listen through the first part, which is Foundation 101. And we're going to go ahead and screen share right now and get this ball rolling, I think. Oops. That was not right. Sharing the wrong screen here. So this year, Rotary National President Gordon McAnally has challenged Rotarians worldwide to create hope in the world, one restored or newly created hope at a time. And that is what the Rotary Foundation is all about. On our agenda today, we'll have a brief introduction to the Rotary Foundation by myself. We'll have a discussion on the annual fund by our annual fund subcommittee chair, Dick May, followed by a presentation about the endowment fund and major gifts by our subcommittee chair, Red Golba, followed by a discussion about the Polio Plus Fund by past district governor and the subcommittee chair, Roz Cooper, and then we'll round it out with a discussion on ways to give. So what is a foundation? Are we talking about the club charitable foundation that some of our clubs have? And no. Are we going to talk about the Rotary District 5000 Foundation, that very wonderful foundation that the district has to provide opportunities for clubs throughout the district to be able to have a place where they can have contributions received and receive charitable donations? And no, that's not what we're talking about either. Are we talking about the Hawaii Rotary Youth Foundation, that amazing foundation that provides grant monies that all of our clubs provide to students throughout the state, those wonderful 5,000 life-changing grants that send Hawaii students off to college? And no, we're not talking about that one either today. Is it the Rotary Foundation? Yes, absolutely.
Our vision for the Rotary Foundation began 100 years ago. At Rotary's 1917 convention, President Arch Clump proposed an endowment for doing good in the world. His dream expanded the reach of Rotary far beyond the club. A contribution of $26.50 launched our foundation's endowment. A century later, we've spent more than $3 billion on humanitarian efforts worldwide.
Every Rotary project anywhere in the world always started out with one person who had an idea. And then they were able to grow and develop that idea by using that powerful network of Rotary to really change the world.
We are active, we are effective, we are really alive.
Our foundation has always been dedicated to improving lives. The first grant provided aid to disabled children. Today, we are on the verge of ending polio.
Et lorsque je vois une mère me sourire après avoir donné le vaccin à son enfant, cela comble ma journée de joie. Parce que j'ai la conviction que cet enfant ne sera jamais handicapé.
Well, without Rotary, this polio campaign wouldn't be anywhere. And the incredible effort that's been made from the very beginning is really unprecedented.
In the wake of a world war, we made a global impact by funding scholarships for international study. Today, we train the next generation of global peacemakers.
The Rotary Peace Fellowship takes people who have the desire to learn and gives them that opportunity.
Good intentions alone are not sufficient. This is one of the most important things an international organization like Rotary should do.
We all see this as a passion. We've got to do something for change. Not only for young people of today, but of tomorrow.
Rotary is dedicated to personal and professional connections, so we created Group Study Exchange to build international understanding. Today, our foundation supports vocational training teams around the globe.
You turn the dial until this color matches this color.
The VTT program allows people to bring specific skills to improve another country.
Rotarians wanted to broaden their impact, so our foundation began funding their projects. A decade later, we began supporting larger projects to address health, hunger, and other humanitarian needs. Today's large-scale grants are measurable and sustainable. They allow us to tackle humanity's greatest challenges. "100 years ago, Arch Klump had a vision. His vision has become our legacy.
The Rotary Foundation is a great tool to transform the world.
That's what Rotary is all about. Vision to see, faith to believe, and courage to act.
The Rotary Foundation. We are doing good in the world. Let's continue for the next 100 years.
So as you heard, the Rotary Foundation was founded in 1917 to do good in the world. It was the vision of the outgoing Rotary International president, Arch Klump, to start an endowment for this purpose. The endowment began with an initial contribution of $26.50. Through the foundation, we now have an annual fund, which we'll talk about in a bit. The annual fund is the fund through which we are able to do projects today with monies that are contributed by you and me. They're invested by Rotary for a term of 3 years, and they come back to the clubs in the form of district DDF or district grants, and also monies to the World Fund to help fund our global grants. We have the endowment fund, which will be discussed by Rick Olba in more detail. This is a fund that collects monies, the corpus of which is not touched, and it's the earnings are then used to be able to fund the different projects we do. And then we also have the Polio Plus Fund, which is a very important fund to help fund our polio eradication efforts. From that initial investment of $26.50, we now have amassed $6.1 billion to be able to do good in the world. The Rotary Foundation mission is to enable Rotarians to advance world understanding, goodwill, and peace through the improvement of health, the support of education, and the alleviation of poverty. It's important to recognize, I think, that the mission of the foundation is to enable Rotarians like you and me to do these wonderful things around the world. It exists for us. It is our foundation. Through the foundation, we're able to do good by having available funds to perform district grants. These are the grants that your clubs are doing here in Hawaii locally. Also, we have these monies available for us to do global grants around the world. We also have the ability to tap these monies to do disaster response grants, which is a very real reality for us in the wake of the Maui wildfires. We're pretty excited to be able to report that just 2 days ago, Rotary International granted us a $25,000 disaster response grant. And then the last one is programs of scale. These are $2 million grants that are available to clubs and districts that have scalable projects. So if you have a club project that you think could be replicated around the world, I would encourage you to consider programs of scale. Now, the foundation is a membership benefit, kind of like a 401k. Your 401k is a benefit to you to fund so that it is able to do things for you down the road. The foundation is very similar in that respect because we make contributions to the foundation, which enable us to do district grants. We make those contributions to be able to do global grants. I think it's worth pointing out that district grant monies not only are used to do things within our local communities, but are also available to do good internationally. And when we do our projects have to fit within one of the areas of focus, the 7 areas of focus, which include or consists of peace building and conflict prevention, disease prevention and treatment, water, sanitation, and hygiene, maternal and child health, basic education and literacy, community and economic development, and the most recent one, the environment. When we do our grants, I would hazard to guess it's not difficult to be able to find a tie to one of these areas of focus. And in terms of the amount of projects and the amount of money that we are able to do good in the world in these areas of focus, this is a graphic from Rotary International, which shows the numbers of grants and the numbers and the dollars, that are used to fund various grants. And as you can see, the red area consists of grants that are used for disease and treatment and prevention. It by far gets the lion's share of the monies. At the top in the little green area, that's the environment. This is the first graphic to show grants for the environment because the environment as an area of focus is new. I suspect over time we're going to see that grow considerably. Now the fund has 3 basic funds. We have the annual fund, the endowment fund, and Polio Plus fund. There are other funds as well, but they're relatively small compared to the annual fund, the endowment fund, and the Polio Plus fund. For example, disaster response funds are a separate fund, but they're actually underneath the annual fund. So we don't deal with it as a separate topic, but we do want to make mention of it because it is important. The annual fund is unique in that it's supported by annual giving. The endowment fund is unique because, as I mentioned earlier, the contributions that we make, those monies are not touched. It's the earnings that are then used to fund projects here in Hawaii and around the world. Polio Plus is kind of like a checking account. The monies go in, the monies go out, but they're earmarked for polio eradication. And each of the funds has separate investment goals, guidelines, and objectives. So now I'd like to introduce our annual fund committee chair, Dick May, who's going to take us through the annual fund. Dick May.
Thanks very much, Del. Appreciate it. Thanks to all of you for joining today and for all you do for Rotary. Next slide, please. Okay, we'll look at the annual fund. And again, if we think about what we bring to the fold as Rotarians, when we join Rotary to help with a club, help with a project, we talk often about bringing time, talent, and treasure. Time we give in many ways: attendance at club meetings, attendance supporting our community and world projects, and conventions, and so much more. Talent, all those spokes on the Rotary wheel represent those diverse talents we bring and put together to do good work. And then treasure. The annual fund is the source of that treasure given by us and dispensed through the fund. That's basically the fuel that powers all that we do. It is intended for near-term work, funded through annual giving, relies completely on annual giving, and works on a 3-year cycle, which enables us to amortize any admin costs, which are relatively low. Contributions are credited each club. They apply to your club goals. And I will state right here that while you see the annual fund, endowment fund, and Polio Plus fund, however you give in whatever measure to any of these funds, these are all equally contributions to the Rotary Foundation, all equally creditable to you for tax purposes and all equally creditable to you for recognition you receive. Next slide. Okay, if you look at a typical charitable organization, you'll see quite a bit of money lost to what we call friction, the cost of doing business, which then reduces the donor's money to that goes for projects. Rotary operates a great deal, as you have seen, on volunteerism rather than having to pay for services. And because of the way it operates, that amount lost is very low. You're not going to receive a package in the mail from Rotary with a plush toy or an annual calendar or a bunch of stickers to put on your return address area for your envelopes, because all of that is paid by those other organizations to some fund to try to get your money and make you feel like you owe them something. Rotary doesn't do that. We simply ask you and thank you for what you give, and it comes back for us to do our work with hardly any takeaway. Next slide, please. And here's what Charity Navigator says about us. We are basically the highest rated organization you can give your money to, and 91% of our funds go to what we do in the good work of Rotary. Next slide. Okay, so there's the charity rating, as you can see, score of 100%. And so we have done very well there. We need to keep on doing just that through your generosity. Next slide. I will foot stomp this a little bit. You'll hear share mentioned frequently, and I'm sure Rick Goebel will mention it with the endowment fund. You will not hear it with Polio Plus, because Polio is a dedicated purpose fund, so the share does not apply there. But however you designate, whether you write a check and give it to your foundation chairperson in your club, or Rotary Direct, or any other giving system, please check share. That contribution then enters the share system over that 3-year period we talked about earlier. And under that, then instead of all of the donation going to the World Fund, we have a share for the district designated funds, which enable us to apply those the way we as a district and we, the clubs in the district, want to apply it for both district and global grants. Next slide. So, check share. We'll turn to the endowment fund now. So I will introduce my esteemed colleague, Rick Goebel, who has done great work with the endowment fund. Rick hails from the Rotary Club of Poipu, Kauai. Rick?
Thank you, Dick. And thank you, Del. And thanks to all of you, as Dick and Del have both said, for spending some time with us today. Del, if you could go to the next slide, please. We are going to talk about the endowment fund primarily. I will say there's a little bit in my presentation that actually hits on the annual fund, and that's going to be the major donor area. But we're going to really focus on endowment. Next slide, please. So you can support Rotary through the annual fund, through Polio Plus, during your lifetime. You can continue to support Rotary in perpetuity after you have passed away. And that's what the endowment fund is really all about. And this is a way that you can set up a fund within the Rotary International Foundation that is there forever. And as Del mentioned, this the uniqueness of the endowment program is that the principal is never touched. And if you can think back to one of the slides that Del showed, that principal is currently sitting around $500 million. What Rotary is doing is they are investing the earnings from that principal amount. And as you might expect, the earnings on $500 million can do a whole lot of good in the world. So you designate this as part of your estate, and you can give Rotary multiple types of funding. You can give obviously straight up cash. It could be something from a life insurance policy. It could even be tangible personal property. We'll talk about the different options that exist within the endowment program and the different recognition levels. There's also a recognition level within the annual fund program, which is called a major donor. And a major donor is when you reach $10,000 or more in donations to the annual fund. This can be a single donation. This can be, for a lot of us, it was much easier to do this through cumulative donations as well. Once you hit that $10,000 mark, you are designated as a major donor. There are, again, different tiers of major donor. There's another tier at 25,000, 50,000, and so forth. The highest level of major donor status is known as the Arch Clump Society. And you all will remember why it's called that, is that Arch Clump was the outgoing Rotary International president who actually established the foundation. That is available when you get to $250,000 of annual giving. When you are an Arch Clump Society member, you get special seating at Rotary conventions. You get recognition in the RA annual report. You get invited to Rotary headquarters in Evanston International for an induction ceremony. And you also have special recognition at the first convention, the first international convention that you go to. Next slide, please. So there are different levels that allow you to enter into the endowment program. And the first one, and this one is really fairly straightforward and easy, is the benefactor level. And that's where you commit $1,000 to the Rotary Foundation in your estate plan. And I'm just going to pause before I move on to the next level here and just throw in a little plug here. And I will put in the disclaimer for Dell. I am not an attorney, but the one thing I would like you to really understand is the importance of having a will, an estate plan, whatever it is. Dying intestate, there's always this idea that, oh, well, if you have a spouse, it automatically goes to a spouse. If you have children, it automatically goes to your children. But I know from personal experience, if you have a will, it makes this process much, much easier. So please, if you do not have a will, start planning that out. And that's a great time to start looking at what you want to do with regards to leaving funds to the Rotary Foundation. The next level for the legacy giving is the Bequest Society. And this is where you commit at least $10,000 to the Rotary Foundation in your estate plan. Again, multiple levels here. The couple of key ones here, the $25,000 level, you get to set up what is called a named fund. So if, for example, you attribute your success to your education in the field of science, you can establish a fund, a scholarship fund, for example, that might be called the John and Mary Smith Science Scholarship. And it will then carry your name. And again, this is something that is happening in perpetuity. This is going to go on long after you are gone. Additional recognition levels exist at the $50,000 and $100,000 level. Of course, you can do the simple math and understand that if you're at the $100,000 level, potentially you could do 4 different named funds if you wanted to. If you get to the $250,000 level, again, this is part of your estate plan. You get posthumous induction into the Arch Clump Society. So you get all those benefits, except you're dead. So, not so great there. If you get to the $500,000 level, you get all of those benefits, but you also get special seating at the RI conventions. And that is while you're alive, which is pretty cool. And Rotary recently came up with a new tier of this, which is the Legacy Society. And this is where you commit $1 million or more to the foundation in your estate plan. You get all of the privileges you see up above and a few other things as well. Again, recognition in the annual report and so forth. So these are the different options that exist for legacy giving. The key thing to remember, again, I'm going to keep stressing this about the endowment fund, is that the principal is never touched. So these earnings go on in perpetuity. The funds that you establish are funded forever, which is pretty amazing. And Del, if you go to the next slide, please. Through the endowment fund, you can also participate in the share system. As a matter of fact, I had a member of our club who contacted me 2 days ago and said he was setting up his bequest society, and do I check the one for share or the one that doesn't have share on it? The advantage, as Dick mentioned, to checking the share option there is that this allows some portion of those earnings to come back to our district. So in this case, you're not just saying, hey, I'm going to give this money to the Rotary Foundation and I'm going to let the Rotary Foundation do good in the world. If you check the share option, in 3 years, you'll start getting monies coming back to this district and you're supporting activities within our specific district. Now I'm going to introduce the woman who is known for service in stilettos, past District Governor Roz Cooper, who is going to talk about the Polio Plus Fund.
Thanks, Rick. Really appreciate that introduction, and thanks everyone for being here with us this morning. Next slide, please, Del. The Polio Plus Fund. This is a designated fund, so it doesn't go and back into the annual, come back to the district. It's designated for eradicating polio. Next slide, please. The Polio Plus Fund helps pay for Rotary's efforts to eradicate polio. And it includes the national immunization and surveillance activities. Donations to the Polio Plus Fund helped to fulfill Rotary's initial challenge of $200 million when it was first set up. This challenge was made on the 7th of December in 2007 and began on the 1st of July 2008. So let's look at what I'm calling the 5 W's of Polio Plus. Next slide, please. That's the who, what, where, when, how, and we've heard of those before. What is Rotary? What? The what? Rotary has been working to eradicate polio for over 35 years. And our goals of ridding the world of this disease is, in fact, in sight. We started in 1979 with vaccinations for 6 million children in the Philippines. Today, Afghanistan and Pakistan are the only countries where polio remains endemic. Polio eradication is Rotary's top priority. Where? The area of focus is the world. We want to eradicate the disease from the world. When? Rotary launched the Polio Plus program in 1985. In 1988, when Rotary began working with its partners in the Global Polio Eradication Initiative, there were more than 350,000 polio cases in over 125 countries. Since then, nearly 3 billion children have been immunized against polio, and the incidence of polio has decreased by 99.9%. So the why? Why are we doing this? We want to fulfill a promise made in 1985 to every child of a world free of the threat of polio. The who? It's you, it's me, it's the 1.4 million Rotarians around the world. It's our friends, it's those who contribute and participate in eradicating this disease. Next slide, please. The partnership between Rotary and the Gates Foundation generates more than $150 million annually. And this is done through the commitment made to match Rotary's 2-to-1 contributions donated to polio eradication. This donation is good and will last until the world has been declared polio-free. As of now, contributions to the global polio eradication efforts, including matching funds from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, has exceeded $2 billion. Next slide, please. Last Rotary year, your clubs in our District 5000 established goals of $61,532. Of that, only 84.9% of the clubs reached their individual desired club goal. However, total contributions were $83,336, which is 135.4% of the goals we set. This amazing, and I thank you very much for that. Additionally, this was the first time 100% of our 52 clubs contributed to the Polio Plus program. Congratulations to each of you and mahalo for your supporting of the Polio Plus Fund. Next slide. With the Gates Foundation 2-to-1 match, your total contributions added up to over $250,000. That's how the foundation worked. The Gates Matching Fund worked. So this money that we have can do much, much more than we ever thought. Your contributions do make a difference. This is awesome. Thank you so much. Next slide, I think. But we're not finished. This year, if you haven't yet set your goal, please do so. Make a commitment and a pledge to support your program. This year, we also plan to include Rotary clubs in getting them involved. So I've heard questions often as to what is actually the plus? What does the plus mean? When we talk about Polio Plus, yes, we know we're eradicating polio, but do we realize how many added benefits this program provides? Next slide. We're providing jobs, clean water, preventing disease, and improving healthcare. Through polio surveillance systems, health workers have detected new cases of polio and determined where and how they originated. They are also finding people with symptoms of yellow fever in the process. During the outbreak of Ebola in Nigeria, health workers prevented the disease from spreading by using methods developed for the polio eradication campaign to find who might have come in contact and infect all the infected people. Children protected from polio still face other illnesses like malaria, which kill more people than all other diseases combined. Worldwide, children die of malaria every 2 minutes. Items like insecticides, treated bed nets are often distributed for free during polio immunization events. The World Health Organization organized a campaign to deliver anti-malaria medicine, which was given to children using the polio eradication step and infrastructure. A study estimates that a vitamin A drops given to children at the same time as the polio vaccine has prevented 1.25 million deaths by decreasing susceptibility to infectious disease. Next slide, please. Rotary has been working to eradicate polio for over 35 years, and our goal of ridding the earth of this disease is in sight. We started in 1979 with vaccinations for 6 million children in the Philippines. Today, Afghanistan and Pakistan are only countries where polio remains endemic. Polio eradication is Rotary's top priority. Rotary launched the Polio Plus program in 1985 and 1988 when Rotary began working with its partners in the Global Polio Eradication Initiatives. There were more than 350,000 polio cases in over 125 countries. Since then, nearly 3 billion children have been immunized against polio, and the incidence of polio has decreased by 99.9%. This is why it is vital we continue to make polio eradication a top priority. On the 10th of September, we will be discussing in more detail information on polio and the endgame strategic plan of global polio eradication. Please add this to your calendar and join us. Now it is my great pleasure to turn the microphone over to our esteemed District Rotary Foundation Coordinator, Del Green, who will update you on our disaster response. Del?
Thank you, Roz. So as I mentioned earlier, the main funds are the annual fund, the endowment fund, and the Polio Plus fund. But we do have other funds as well, such as the disaster response fund, which is actually part of the annual fund. The purpose of the Disaster Response Fund is to provide grants that are available to be able to provide immediate response to clubs and what have you, to be able to do things on the ground immediately after a disaster has occurred. For example, like the Maui wildfires. Rotary International provides funds and grants, rather, up to $25,000, which we have actually applied for and received. These grant monies are also available for short-term assistance and long-term rebuilding. The issue with these particular grants is that they're maximized at $25,000. But the good thing about it is, as soon as you close that particular grant, you can go ahead and apply for a new one, which is exactly what we intend to do. We've also done this in the past with Ukraine. There are also dedicated funds within Rotary International. Currently, there are only two. One is for Ukraine and one is for Pakistan. This is a graphic of basically all we've talked about this morning in a nutshell, in an attempt to simplify it. So at the top, you can see that when Rotarians give to Polio Plus, those monies go directly to the polio eradication effort. With respect to the annual fund and the endowment fund, they both have the ability to have the monies, and all the monies in the case of the annual fund go into share where they're invested for 3 years and then come out in the form of DDF and monies to the World Fund. The endowment fund is a little bit different because as Rick has mentioned earlier, the corpus of those monies, the principal amount that you and I contribute to the endowment fund is not touched, it's only the earnings. And so annually the earnings come out, they go into the share system where they're invested for the 3-year period, and then they're made available to us in the form of DDF and World Fund contributions to be able to fund global grants and district grants and the like. And then we have other, which are, for example, the disaster response grants. Now, how do we support the foundation? Well, there are lots of different ways we can give if we're so inclined. The favorite one is to enroll in Rotary Direct. A lot of us have done that, including myself, where we can simply enroll and have monies withdrawn from, in our case, it could be a bank account or a credit card account. It could be on whatever basis you want. For example, it could be monthly, it could be quarterly, it could be annually, and whatever amount you designate. The other way to do it is to simply go online. There are probably at least 4 different ways to be able to give to any of the funds that are available through Rotary. It's whether you're a Rotarian or not, you're certainly welcome to do that. You just simply hit the donate button, follow the different links, and it'll take you to a page that will give you the opportunity to either select that you want to give to the annual fund, select that you want to make an endowment fund gift, or maybe an annual fund gift or disaster fund gift. Another easy way is to simply write a check, excuse me, and give it to the Rotary Foundation chair in your club. That's another favorite way to get your club involved. You can mail a check directly to the Rotary Foundation. One of the things that you might want to consider is to maybe to establish a memorial or a tribute when you're making your giving. And then the last opportunity that we have listed here is to consider perhaps having your club established a named endowment fund so that the monies that are generated from that particular gift will go back to your club. Now remember, Hawaii is unique amongst districts around the world in that when we as Rotarians give our contributions to the annual fund, those monies, because of the policies that have been established by the district, go back to your club. So those monies, dollar for dollar, less of course, the amounts that are the administrative fees to Rotary, go back to your club and are available for your clubs to spend in the way of district grant monies and global grant monies. And that's not the case around the world. So we're very unique in that particular respect. And I'm very proud of that. recognitions. It seems as if Rotarians really appreciate their pins. I think that when we first become a member, they give us a pin. And then when we accomplish various things throughout our lives as Rotarians, we get recognized for those things as well. These are the different kinds of recognition, some of which we've already discussed this morning. A sustaining member is somebody who gives to the annual fund $100 each year, and we encourage everyone to at least be a sustaining member. The next level, which I think is a very significant one in the life of most Rotarians, is a Paul Harris Fellow. The Paul Harris Fellow recognition is very significant because it's named after the founder of Rotary, Paul Harris, the Chicago attorney who founded Rotary with 3 of his business associates in 1905. And in recognition and honor of him, for Rotarians who give $1,000 either outright or cumulatively, we recognize that milestone with a Paul Harris Fellow pin and a certificate. A Paul Harris Society member is somebody who gives $1,000 annually. We certainly appreciate people like that, but that's not something that maybe all of us can do, but maybe something we might aspire to. The White Hat Society is a recognition that is bestowed upon individuals who have given $5,000 or more in one Rotary year. So this is not cumulative over some extended period of time, but it's over one Rotary year. A major donor is somebody who has given $10,000 or more, which is a very significant milestone. It doesn't have to be all at once, it can be cumulative, but once you achieve that, you become a major donor, which entitles you to be invited to different Rotary events as a major donor. The Polio Plus Society is a relatively new society for us here in Hawaii. And it's a very important one because this is one that recognizes people who have given $100 or more each Rotary year. And so we encourage everyone to consider becoming a Polio Plus Society member. The benefactor and bequest societies are different in that these are not present gifts. These are future gifts, although they could be present. But a lot of times they're gifts that are made either through our wills or estates. The benefactor is somebody who has pledged to give $1,000 or more upon their death. The bequest is somebody who has given $10,000 or more upon their death. The Legacy Society is similar except that it is actually $1 million, which is a very generous gift upon your death. Arch Clump could be either upon your death or it could be present, and that's $250,000. And we certainly appreciate everyone who gives to the foundation. But not only do we have individual recognitions, but we also have club recognitions. Within our clubs, we can be recognized for example, being a 100% Paul Harris Fellow Club, where all of our members are Paul Harris Fellows, or a 100% Paul Harris Society member, where some clubs have 100% of their members become Paul Harris Society members. So these are different foundation gifts that are available to us within our clubs. So that leaves us about 15 minutes for questions and answers. What we have now on the screen is the contact information for Dick May, who is our annual fund giving chair. So if you have additional questions, aside from the ones that we're going to give you an opportunity to ask in just a moment, feel free to reach out to Dick May and contact him either by email or by telephone. Or if we have endowment or major gift questions, Rick Goebel has his contact information there. Feel free to reach out to him if you have a question that doesn't get answered this morning. And then we also have Roz Cooper, who's our Polio Plus chair. Her contact information is there. If you have a question that doesn't get answered today, feel free to reach out to her. Or if you have other questions, you have my contact information there. And I'm going to, at this moment, stop sharing and open it up to questions and answers. And perhaps we could have Benson help us moderate that, or Naomi Masuno.
Okay, good. Any questions? Now, if you don't want to unmute yourself and ask a question, you can also post it in the chat, and we can work with it from there. Go ahead, Rich.
Vincent.
Go
For
ahead.
Dick May. Dick,
Yes, sir.
you mentioned the fact that one of the ways that we can do global grants and other grants is programs of scale. That's the first I've heard of that. Can you elaborate just a little bit on programs of scale?
Sure, Rich. So the programs of scale are relatively new programs that Rotary International has adopted, and these are competitive grants. There's only one a year. They're funded over a 3-year period, not to exceed $2 million. And the idea is to be able to replicate someplace a scalable project. So if we have a project, for example, Polio Plus, I think is probably a very good example of that, where we had the test project in the Philippines. We realized that it was a huge success. Somebody had the brilliant idea that we could probably replicate this, and then we adopted it as a Rotary International initiative. So it's different in terms of how it developed over time, but that's just an example of a project that is scalable, that you would be able to maybe apply for this. It's a competitive grant.
Thank you. Thank you, Dale.
Okay, Rick, go ahead. Yeah.
This is less of a question and more of an additional bit of information. For the Paul Harris Society and the Polio Plus Society, those are not things that Rotary automatically recognizes and says, hey, you're in here. You actually have to notify Rotary of that. Also, for Benefactor, Bequest, and Legacy Society, Rotary has no way of knowing what is in your estate plan. So there's a form for all of these things on the Rotary website where you would notify Rotary so that they are aware. We had recently in our on our island here, we had a gentleman who passed away who was a Bequest Society member, but we didn't know that, and Rotary didn't know that. And while it's a pleasant surprise, it would have been nice for him to have gotten the recognition of that before he actually passed away. So those things you do need to notify Rotary about.
Okay, thanks, Rick. So I wanted to let everybody know that if you have a question, raise your virtual hand. If you go down at the bottom of your screen under reactions, when you hit raise hand, you see, then you come up to the top of our screen and we can see you. We have 70 people on the call today. So if you just sort of wave your hand, we may not see you if you're on screen 3. Okay, so just raise your hand like that and we can see you. And then you can, when you're done, you can of course lower your hand. All right, anybody want to raise their virtual hand? Anybody want to try it? See, there's Brittany.
I see Mark.
Brittany finished that one up. So Brittany, go ahead, and then Mark, I see you, so you're next, and Rich has got a thumbs up. Okay, Brittany, go ahead.
Awesome, thanks, Benson. I was wondering if we could get a little more information on the actual application process. Like, where would we go if we were interested in filling out an application for any of these grants? Are there specific, windows of application opening annually or anything along those lines? I was just looking for a resource on where I could potentially go to find some of that information.
If I may, Brittany, actually, it's a very good question. And I think that the answer to that question is going to be provided in the next session on grant qualification.
Oh, all right. Thanks, Del.
You're quite welcome.
Okay, Rich has got his hand up. Nice job, Rich.
Yeah, well, I do have another question, and this one is for Dick May. So Dick, we talk about the annual fund when we give the annual fund, and we always emphasize the fact that you want to mark share, annual fund share. And I understand that, but I also think that there are times when you're making a contribution and it may not be really clear when you're giving to the annual fund whether you're actually have marked share or not. Why can't it be simpler where it always is share rather than having to search and make sure that you've marked annual fund share?
Well, first of all, I want to applaud you because you are among our very most generous and caring donors. And not only that, you give in every possible way. So a huge mahalo for that. That's a good question. And I'm not sure I can answer it right now, except to say that I think that's a valid issue we need to take. The way I tend to do it as a dinosaur, to be perfectly honest, is pretty easy because I tend to write a check and hand it to my foundation chairperson in the club, and I mark share on the club. And a number of the forms allow you conspicuously to mark share, but I'm not sure that all forms do. I'm going to have to get back in the books, to tell you the honest truth, and look at all of the ways in which you might contribute to the various funds and see where there's more clarity needed. And then we're happy to surface it up to, it's going to have to go obviously above the district level, I think, if it's a Rotary International form, but happy to take it on. Del, you have any other take on that?
Yeah, I'd add that if you go to the Rotary International website and use the online giving opportunity, it does indicate share, so that makes it a little bit easier to do that. But there are people who aren't interested in necessarily giving in a way that share would be appropriate. For example, not everybody. Giving is not limited to Rotarians. And so we might have people who aren't Rotarians, people who might not have clubs that would benefit from the share program giving. So I can see that they have tried to make a broad appeal.
Yeah, I somewhat parochially, obviously foot stomp share because of the simple fact that the money for the annual fund tends to come back to us in short term, and also the fact that we are unique, as Del said, in this district, in that the clubs themselves have a great deal of say then in how that money gets used. But obviously it's a donor's choice. And if you opt not to check share and you give it to the general fund, it all go to the good work worldwide of Rotary. So there's no badness in it. It's just that little extra goodness for us in sharing helps us to have a little more control over projects that might be dear and dear to our heart, whether they're local or global.
And so we do encourage people when they give to give share. I would add that in addition to the annual fund, one of the things that we did recently is we amended our district policy manual for the foundation to provide clubs an opportunity to establish endowments, so that or Rotarians within clubs, if they have endowments of a certain amount, to be able to indicate a preference that the earnings from those gifts, when they become realized, to benefit their clubs through the share program.
Yeah.
No one asked a question, by the way, in this format about tax consequences, but let me just briefly mention that the Rotary Foundation is a 501c3. Therefore, your donations, whether they go to Polio Plus, endowment, or the annual fund, are tax deductible. Similarly, with the District 5000 Foundation, they are tax deductible. Unless your individual Rotary Club has an associated 501c3 foundation, money you give, whether it's happy dollars or club dues or whatever else, are not typically tax deductible under federal law. They're all for a good purpose, but not tax deductible. Thank you.
Okay, that's good. Thanks a lot, Dick. So we got more virtual hands coming up here. So Jacob, we're going to go to you, then Dave Mosher, and then Alan Kawamoto. So Jacob, go ahead.
Yeah, last Rotary year we had a non-Rotarian donate $1,000 we put into the annual fund on his behalf. And how do I, for the Paul Harris Fellow, that can apply to a non-Rotarian, right?
Correct. That is correct.
Okay. How would I apply for that or apply on his behalf?
When you make your gift on behalf of somebody, you provide their name. And Rotary actually will give them a number. Even if you're not a Rotarian, you will get a number. And so they actually will track the monies that have been given on your behalf. And because they do that, because they assign numbers, recognize that when you, for those of you who might take a hiatus from Rotary, so you've been a member for a while, you've been giving, and then you might take a hiatus and you decide to come back, what you'll want to do is when you become a member again, is to not become necessarily just a brand new member, because what they're going to do is they're going to give you another number, and you'll begin tracking under that new number. You want Rotary to know what your prior number was, so that your prior giving will be associated to you, even though you've taken a break.
Okay, thanks, Del, for that answer.
But is there like a form that I need to fill out in order to apply for his Paul Harris Fellowship?
Yeah, the form was the form that you used to make the gift. So I don't know that you can go and do it retroactive. I think you indicated that the gift was already made. So you might, so I don't know if you can, again, go back and say that that gift was on behalf of somebody else. They might have already registered as a gift on behalf of the club and not the individual.
Well, I put his name there, but
oh, you did? So then if you put the person's name on the form, then they should already have that. Well, why don't you go ahead and just contact us offline, and we'll see what we can do to kind of make sure you've got that. Find the form and then provide us a copy, and then we'll see what we can do to help you out.
All right, sounds good.
Our pleasure.
Hey, Alan Kamimoto, go ahead.
And real quickly, Marjorie and I always have this problem, but as the membership, foundation chairs, how do we track the donations? They never track the donations starting from July 1st every year, and it's such a puzzle to me to figure out how much people have donated year to date. Is there any kind of resolution to that problem?
I could probably answer that.
Go for it, Dave.
One of the important things to do as a foundation chair is to make sure you do a copy of your report for your annual giving report. If you give the share report, that one will provide you with all the share points that every person has given. So if you've got that as your master account at the beginning of the year, when you see any changes in that, for that each individual, you'll know that they've given additional money for that. And so that's kind of how I was tracking it and keep track of it.
I wanted an easy solution, Dave.
There isn't an easy solution because there is a privacy law, but we are asking for quarterly reports now, and we will be doing that. And those quarterly reports will show cash giving for each club member. And so you can go back to the foundation and ask us, and we could probably get that for you.
Okay, Marjorie, you have a question? Go ahead.
I really just have a comment that I wanted to make, and that is one of the things that was not included in the ways of giving is to give through an IRA that someone has if they're over 50 and a half, or whatever the age is, 59 and a half. That when you do that, like my IRA's at Schwab, so I write a form to Schwab, but there's also a form that needs to go to Rotary at the same time to tell them where you want the money to go. And that is a form online as well. But it's important to know that it's an easy way to give because it counts towards your required minimum distribution, as well as giving a charitable gift.
Okay, Marjorie, thanks a lot. So, hey, we're going to have to rotate now here in a minute to our grant qualification workshop, which is going to be another hour. But before we do that, let me say this, because there are people on the call. There's 90 people on the call right now. And I would venture to say that about half of the people that are on the call today had no idea what was just said in the last hour. I mean, because maybe they're new to Rotary. I know in my club, I've got a few members that just joined Rotary like this month, and none of this made any sense to them. So what I will tell everyone on this call is this presentation that you just saw, this needs to be done in your club at least once a year, maybe twice, because of all of the things that we teach in Rotary, and Naomi and I have been doing this for years, the foundation is the most difficult to understand. It's the most complicated. and you're not going to learn it in 1 hour, and it takes multiple times to go through it. I've been through it dozens of times, and I just learned a couple of things today. So at the district level, there's probably about a dozen of us that could come to your club virtually or in person that could kind of explain how this goes. November is Foundation Month worldwide for Rotary, so we'll be kind of focused on that training. But please, if you're the president or in the leadership of your club, make sure that some kind of foundation presentation is made to your club members at least once a year so that they can start to understand and get this. Even a lot of members that have been in Rotary for a long time aren't exposed to it enough to really understand it. So please follow up. I mean, reach out. I mean, we've got a great foundation team that's willing to come and talk to people. So Naomi, you want to add anything before we rotate over to grant qualification?
No, we need to wrap up. So Del, did you want to do the closing remark?
Well, I didn't have anything other than to say thank you very much for your participation this morning. Please stay tuned and hang on, because we're going to have another super exciting presentation on grant qualification, which is very important because we need at least 2 members from every club to attend the next session, because we want you to be able to spend your money. Thank you very much.